What's up everybody, 40 the Broadway Saiyan here, and welcome back again to my YouTube channel, bringing you guys another video on Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. So for this video, we're going to be covering the next upcoming Lost Chapters going live soon on Global Opera Omnia, which is going to be featuring the return of Bosch from Final Fantasy XII. In this Lost Chapters, Bosch will be getting a rework, and he's also going to be getting the debut of his LD weapon, and we're going to be covering those details for those particular upgrades to Bosch. The synergy characters that are going to be for this Lost Chapters are going to be Vaughn, Sarah, and also our current burst character, which is going to be Noctis. I'm also going to be touching up on the banner as well, and whether or not, depending on your resources and depending on how your roster looks like, if this banner is going to be worth, pulling for. And then afterwards, we're going to be touching up on the Chaos difficulty boss fight as well as the Chaos challenge. It's going to be featuring the return of that Ochu type boss monster called the Might Eater. So we're going to be talking about that as well. And then afterwards, you guys are going to get that Let's Play at the very end of the video where I quickly go over, how to play Bosch and, his abilities and things like that. Now, before I get started or move forward with the video, I do want to give a big thanks and shout outs to Rem from the Dissidia DB, because all of the info that comes from this video comes directly from his website. Be sure to check that out in the video description as well as the pinned comments, as well as to Macnol and the Dissidia info, another fantastic resource for Dissidia Opera Omnia, as well as the Opera Omnia tracker, a great website you can use to keep track of your progress, and as well to the Tonberry Troop for the time and effort that they take to create those beautiful infographics, summarizing all these characters that I talk about. And last but not least, the Final Fantasy TCC podcast, giving us Opera Omnia players a weekly podcast. Without further ado, let's go ahead and talk about Bosch and his Lost Chapters. Bosch returns to Global Opera Omnia, boasting a rework and the debut of his LD weapon. His rework improves his skill 1, Fulminating Darkness, increasing its brave hits to 5, increased brave potency, increased critical brave damage dealt, 150% brave overflow, increased brave refunded based on the HP damage dealt, and extends the duration of his lock debuff, Kingdom Shield unique buff, and HP damage reduction buff by 2 turns. His skill 2 Ruin Impediment gains 2 additional uses, increased brave hits to 4, increased brave potency, 150% brave overflow, and brave refunds the party based on the HP damage dealt. His Brave Attack Plus gets upgraded as well by recovering the party's Brave before the Brave hits, increased Brave hits to 2, and an increased Brave potency. Finally, his HP Attack Plus is now a 2-hit, non-elemental melee, single-target Brave plus single-target HP attack with a 120% Brave overflow, and recovers his own HP based on the HP damage he deals up to 10% of his max HP. His LD weapon, at full limit break, permanently increases the party's max Brave and attack, allows him to start the quest with Knight's Aptitude for 6 turns, and grants him access to his LD ability called Indomitable Palisade, which has 3 uses. Indomitable Palisade is an 8-hit, non-elemental melee AoE Brave plus AoE HP attack with an increased Brave damage against a single target, 200% Brave overflow, split HP damage, Brave refunds by 30% of HP damage dealt, inflicts lock for 5 turns, grants both Kingdom Shield and HP damage reduction for 6 turns, and grants him a new unique buff called Indomitable for 10 turns. Indomitable increases his own attack, increases Brave overflow, and restores his HP back to 50% of his max HP when he takes HP damage and his HP drops below 50% of max HP. Recommended artifact passes for Bosch post his rework and LD debut are 3 copies of Attack plus 108 and 3 copies of Max Brave plus 330. Alright guys, now that we've gone ahead and taken a look at what Bosch can do with his rework and his LD weapon, what are my thoughts about this character? He is an incredibly powerful tank. Bosch is that tank where he's going to force enemies to lock onto him, and he also absorbs all of the AoE HP damage that is directed at your party, and he also mitigates that HP damage. And take a look at what his LD buff does, that new Indomitable buff. Pretty much, if Bosch's HP goes down below 50%, he heals. So he pretty much has a hard time dying, which is insane. So he is definitely a tank that most players I recommend, should consider adding to their roster with his full kit, just because the man just does not die as long as he has that buff on. Now, as far as the banner goes, the banner actually has, some pretty solid weapons on it. We still got Vaughn's EX, which, Vaughn is a burst and LD character now, so if you're still missing his EX, it's on there. It has Bosch's gear. It has Noctis's burst, so I know a lot of you guys have been planning on pulling for Noctis's burst on this banner because Bosch gets his upgrades, and it's actually a really good banner to pull on. And then it has Sarah, who at this point is a little bit more on the outdated side. However, she could still function for specific fights where her Brave Poison debuffs can do really, really well, especially if you have the cursed artifacts or her special artifacts farmed up for her. She could actually still be a viable character moving forward. Just letting you know that her potencies at this point are a little bit on the low side, but her utility in keeping the enemies of Brave at bay is what value she brings. So if you are missing a really powerful tank and you want a tank that can mitigate HP damage and at the same time take that HP damage for your party to protect your party members and pretty much almost never dies, then this might be the banner for you. But it is a very solid and a very, very good banner. All right, guys, so now we're going to go ahead and talk about the Chaos difficulty boss fight as well as the Chaos challenge against the Might Eater Ochu boss. Let's go ahead and move forward to that. The Chaos difficulty boss fight for this Lost Chapters features the return of the Might Eater Ochu type boss. The boss is weak to fire, ice, wind, and dark and absorbs thunder and earth. It is also immune to the initial Brave Down debuff. It inflicts debuffs such as sap and defense down and will also apply a max HP down effect on the entire party at the beginning of the wave. Its most lethal attack is Absorb Energy, where it absorbs your entire party's Brave and fires off a devastating AoE HP attack. If you plan to use Bosch, even without his LD, he will prove to be very useful in taking the HP damage and lowering the amount that is dealt. Other characters who have ways to mitigate HP damage can be very useful for this fight, such as Hope, Porum, or Kimari. Characters who possess powerful AoE abilities will do very well for this fight since the boss will frequently summon adds. A character who can deal very well with its Absorb Energy is Setzer, as he can apply the Freeze debuff, which prevents Brave gain. As far as the Chaos challenge goes, it may actually be one of the easier ones depending on who you have built. Vaughn, Bosch, and Noctis all have access to their LD weapons, which will help tremendously for the Chaos challenge. Sarah, while a bit outdated at this point, can still work very well, especially if you have her special artifacts, since she can apply her debuffs that apply Brave Poison. All in all, as long as you have ways to get around the powerful AoE Brave Drain into AoE HP attack from the boss, this Chaos fight shouldn't be too difficult. Alrighty guys, so here we are with the Let's Play portion of the video, where I'm going to be showing you guys how to play Bosch. Now Bosch, even with his rework and his LD, is actually a really straightforward character to use. Nothing really complex about his kit that you really need to look out for, compared to like a character like Noctis, where there's a lot of things you got to pay attention to. But for Bosch, the most important thing that you want to look out for when you're playing him, assuming that you have his kit, fully purpled with his EX, and then you fully max limit break his LD weapon, is you want to make sure that his Kingdom Shield unique buff is active, and you could get Kingdom Shield by either using his skill 1 or by using his LD, and then you also want to make sure that his HP damage reduction buff is active, which also comes from those two abilities that I just mentioned, and then, most importantly, you want to make sure his Indomitable buff, which comes from his LD weapon, is also active. So we're just going to go ahead and start things off by using the LD. Alright, so we have 10 turns of Indomitable, and then right after he deals the damage, he also gives himself 6 turns of that Kingdom Shield and 6 turns of that HP damage reduction. So you want to make sure that those buffs are always active, because this way, any type of AoE HP damage that is directed at your party is always going to be redirected to Bosch. He's going to reduce that damage, and then let's not forget, Indomitable now allows him to survive any type of lethal damage whenever it's like, whenever his HP is 50% or less. So pretty much he has a really hard time dying, which is fantastic for a tank to be able to do that. Now his other abilities are pretty straightforward. So skill 1, like we were talking about earlier, this is what you use to refresh his Kingdom Shield and his HP damage reduction if you're noticing that the turn duration is about to expire. Skill 2 is going to be like his main source of like really hard hitting damage. This also refreshes his Knight's Aptitude buff, which allows his attack and max brave, to consistently, be higher. And then let's not forget, when we actually gain access to his EX, when you have it fully charged up, that's where you can also reapply his other unique buff that gives the party an attack and max brave increase, and it's applied to his allies as an aura. HP Attack ++ is a great option because you could also use this to not only save his skills, but he also does give the party, a little bit of Brave battery, and he also recovers some HP to himself based on the HP damage he deals up to 10% of his max HP. And then afterwards, he also has Brave Attack ++. You're probably not going to really be using this because most of the time, Bosch is going to, consistently be dealing damage and also be taking the damage for your party, ensuring everybody stays alive. And then afterwards, he has his C65. His C65 increases his attack and also gives himself a way to heal his HP. So very straightforward character. Again, the main things you want to look out for are paying attention to his LD buff, which lasts for 10 turns, and then also his Kingdom Shield and his HP damage reduction buff. So let's just go ahead and actually just see the rest of his skills here. So that's his skill 2. So it's going to be his hardest hitting skill. It's also his coolest looking skill. I really like that effect. It's Gabranth also has that effect where you see like the screen shatter, and it's really, really cool to see that. This is going to be his skill 1. So this is what you're going to be using to refresh his shield as well as the HP damage reduction. And then finally, this is going to be his EX ability. Another cool looking ability. And remember, that also does refresh the buff that allows your party to benefit from that aura, that attack and max brave increase aura. So that's going to be Bosch, guys. A pretty straightforward character. Only a few things to pay attention to, but no crazy rotations or things like that. So hopefully this video helps you guys understand Bosch, especially as he's going to be returning to Global Opera Omnia with his rework and his LD debut. Thank you guys again for watching. This is 40 the Broadway Saiyan. Stay tuned for the next video, and mahal, guys.